All right, and we are live. Welcome to this live edition of Mike's Money Picks. This is the Thursday night live show that we've kind of gotten in a regular habit of doing for the first 5 weeks here. Even though I was gone last week, Zach was able to fill in for me. Speaking of which, I'm joined here by Zach Green, aka Big Country DFS. He is my co-pilot here for this live show. And remember, this show is for you guys. So we're going to be talking about college football DFS. We're going to talk very briefly the Friday main slate, and then we're going to get on talking about the Saturday slate. So if there's any questions you guys want, any players you want to talk about, any thing you want to talk about, even if you want to talk about props or drafts or anything that's like DFS adjacent, hit us up in the chat, let us know, and we'll be sure to get to it. So, Zach, I got to ask you, because I know what this answer is for me. How did week 4 go for you in DFS?
Well, so it was kind of, roller coaster like normal. It was looking great because I was big fading Mateer and Haynes, and at halftime they both had single digits, and then they ended up getting there, and then I was all in on Desmond Reed, and he gets hurt like the second drive of the game, and that just sank everything. And then I just couldn't buy a point from Jaden Maeva. I figured he would be a lot better. Like if he just does what he normally does, I would have been fine for at least my cash games to get the money backs. But I knew I was sinking GPPs once Reed was hurt.
Yeah, the old lightning delay got us with the USC guys, because I had a ton of Makai Lemon and I had a ton of Maeva as well. And really, last week was one of the worst weeks of college football DFS I've had in a long time, because a lot of the cheap guys that I played last week did not get there. Kevin Riley of Alabama, dud. Parker Livingstone for Texas, dud. Like, when your cheap guys are all duds, you just really have no way of separating, but especially considering that they were popular. I didn't realize how popular they were going to be. I thought that I was, having an edge on the Kevin Riley news and on the Parker Livingstone news, but they were popular. They didn't hit, and you just have no way of separating when your value plays like that don't hit. So it was a bad week for me.
Yeah,
so,
and then and Maccabee killed me too, because I thought even in the game script going negative that he would be more involved in the passing game, had catches every week, and then all of a sudden they don't even throw to him.
Yeah, that one was a strange one. Like, that game was just so weird because of the delay.
Yeah.
Like, it just never really felt like, I don't know, it just felt almost like an exhibition or like a week 0 game or something like that. It didn't really feel real, if that makes sense. Like, it was strange. It was just really strange. All right. So also forgive my wandering eyes here as I'm watching my Charlotte 49ers take on Rice. This is absolutely like the battle of Midway tonight. Like, both of these teams are not any good. And maybe Charlotte can end up pulling it through. I see that Darren in the chat said those Charlotte uniforms are ugly. Don't they know they're supposed to be green and gold? So green is still the primary color. It has been ever since I was there. These are the special edition Gold Rush uniforms, which I think is really cool in concept, but it needs some tweaking. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing look. I will say it looks exponentially better tonight than when they did it during the day a few years ago. When they did it during the day, the gold did not pop at all, and it just looked like they were wearing sand. Like, it was just not a very appealing uniform night at all. And Zach, I know you're familiar. You go to a school that root for a school that has a ton of alternate uniforms as well. So
yeah.
All right. So speaking of Zach's school, as we're kind of waiting on the everybody to roll in here with the audience, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Friday slate very briefly, because Zach, you do have a little bit of inside information. Well, maybe not inside information, but you certainly have more information than most. Your Oklahoma State Cowboys are on the slate. So what are we looking at here with this Friday slate, Zach?
So we were kind of talking about it before we started the show, that it's basically going to come down to picking the quarterbacks right, because there's so much value, like with KJ Duff and some other guys, that the price, like, I haven't even tried to build a lineup, but I'm guessing you can leave plenty of salary on the table and not even think twice about it.
Agreed.
And so it's going to be which of those four, especially if you do 2 quarterbacks, or if you only do one, gets there. And we talked about it too. a lot of people might be sleeping on Oklahoma State just because of what happened 2 weeks ago, but they did have a bye week last week, and Gundy usually does pretty good whenever he has multiple weeks to prepare, and
Yeah.
also being Tulsa being the opponent. So I do think they play a lot better than they did a couple weeks ago.
So with Oklahoma State, like they're going to score points. The tricky part of them is like you've got Tulsa and Rutgers. They're these super condensed offenses where we know it's going to be Richardson in the run game. It's going to be Zion Booker in the pass game, right? We know who their top two weapons are. Because of Oklahoma State's first two games and having a bye week, we really don't know who their top guys are. But to me, if you're playing GPPs, you've got to take a ton of shots at these Oklahoma State guys because that's the offense that's probably going to score the most points on the slate. And you're going to want to capture that upside some way, somehow, whether it's by trying one of the running backs like Caleb Hicks or whether it's by trying one of the receivers like Gavin Freeman. Like, you're going to want to capture this Oklahoma State team somehow if you're playing GPPs. If you're playing cash, I could understand staying away from it because of the relative security of some of the other condensed offenses. But for GPPs, I think you got to take your shot at the Oklahoma State guys here on this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at the team total right now. It's 33, and the next highest is 24.5.
It's a significant margin.
Yeah, 10 more points higher than anyone else. And another guy to mention is Oscar Hammond. He's a North Texas transfer. He hasn't been able to play for the Cowboys, so he's min price if they try to get something going in the passing game. And I will say the running backs they've used all of them, but Hicks has been by far the guy that they've used the most. And Freeman's been the guy
feels
the
like
most
the safer
targets.
bet.
Yeah.
Well, and then another thing as well, I was doing the math on this earlier. Did you know that if you just play Antoine Raymond of Rutgers at running back and you play KJ Duff of Rutgers at wide receiver, two guys who have been very good to start the season, if you play both of them in your lineup, you can literally afford any combination of players.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Let's go ahead and play two of the best plays on the slate. If I hit the lock button, I can literally play anybody I want after that. It's you do not see that every week on DraftKings.
Yeah, well, that's what I think they do a really poor job on these shorter slates of pricing because, like, Booker has 23 catches already. Any other slate and on a decent team, he's like 8,000 or 9,000. They need to price him to the volume.
Yeah, like if you were just looking at the game log, right? Like you would think he's a 7, 8, maybe even a 9K player, and he's not that on this slate. I don't know what the algorithm's telling him. The algorithm's got some glitches in the system or something because they definitely missed some guys on this Friday night slate. The one thing I will say for the Friday night slate, we're recording this on Thursday night. We still don't know about Kamari Moulton yet. I don't know how much I'm going to be on him if he even plays because they could very well still have running back by committee. But I really like the idea of getting to Gronowski if Moulton is out. I think it will lead to Gronowski being a bigger part of the run game. Rutgers, we've also seen have trouble with mobile quarterbacks like Parker Navarro of Ohio. So I think that that's a guy that I would really be boosting if Moulton was out. Do you have thoughts either way on Moulton, in or out?
Well, actually, I was just Googling it real quick, and it looks like now we can actually make a change here. Xavier Williams has been ruled out.
Okay.
And Kamari Moulton is trending toward return.
Okay.
So I'll send you that. I don't know if there's a way to put a tweet up there on the screen.
We can figure it out.
And so that does make me a little bit more interested in Moulton if he does play, because they're already going to be down one guy.
Yeah. So definitely a situation we're going to need to monitor up until kick. Anything you got to add on the Friday night slate? Other than that, I think it's pretty simple. Like it's quarterback roulette. If you pick the right two quarterbacks and you pick the right Oklahoma State guy, you could probably win all the money.
Yeah, I think basically everybody's starting with Richardson and Raymond for two running backs, and then everybody's starting with Booker and either Duff or Strong for two of their receivers. Yeah. So it's getting those other pieces right.
All right, so let's continue on now to the Saturday main slate. So let's just say it's been the en vogue topic on social media this week and among other content that I have listened to talk about the receivers here on this slate, because there is some There's some mistakes in the algorithm at receiver on this one as well. So we're going to break that down later. Let's start by talking about the overall game environments here on this slate, right? I think on this slate, I think there are some games that are very much worth stacking. I really like the idea of stacking the TCU SMU game, and I'm going to have a ton of lineups devoted to game stacking that. Zach, do you agree, disagree with me on that, or is there another game that is catching your eye?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think we've been nailing these game stacks on the head.
Correct.
Baylor SMU a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned Arkansas Ole Miss. I even mentioned Georgia Tennessee. If anybody remembers that from last week, I mentioned that could be a sneaky one, and it was. And so, yeah, SMU can't stop anything, but they have a high-powered offense and they're fast offense. TCU, same thing, fast offense. Defense maybe a little bit better than SMU, but I mean, still, they're going to give up points. And then I like the Arkansas-Memphis game, and then I like the Ole Miss game, and then I like the Duke game. One thing that I think, and I don't know how you feel, but Utah, Texas Tech, I think the total is a little high on that one.
I agree.
I think that's going to be a little bit more defensive game.
So I actually have a bet on that. I have taken the first half under in that game. So what you have in that game is you not only have two teams that are playing a 10 a.m. body clock kickoff, which as a guy who was around a college football program for 4 years, I didn't play at Charlotte, but I worked in video. I traveled with the team. Getting these guys on a road trip up for a noon kickoff is a difficult logistical process because of everything you have to do. Now you're getting one for 10 a.m. local time. These guys are not going to be ready physically and mentally yet. Add that to the fact that neither of these two teams have played any level of competition yet. I mean, the best opponent by either of the two teams is UCLA, who's fired their head coach. And I just don't really think that either of these two teams are going to be ready for what they're going to see from the other. That it's going to be a long kind of feel out process. The game could very well take off in the second half, but I think it's going to be a slow starter. That's my prediction there on the Utah Texas Tech side.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's something that I think people don't really think about, and I'm glad you mentioned it, but it does make a difference with these West Coast games starting at 11 o'clock Central Time, which is 10 o'clock there. It really messes with you.
Yeah, and also add that to the fact that like people forget that these are 18 to 22-year-old kids. It's not grown men doing this for a living. Some of these guys are making quite a good bit in NIL money. Which, by the way, I do have an NIL story. I don't know if we'll get to it later, but my high school that I teach and coach at is actually playing the number one quarterback in the nation. He's committed to Tennessee next year. And someone on their coaching staff shared an NIL figure that he's going to get next year at Tennessee. And, oh, buddy, that's it must be nice to be getting that at 18 years old. But anyway, that's a story for another time. So aside from the game environments, let's move on to kind of just talking about the quarterback position now. So Darren in the comments with us, he's saying, how laughable is it that Klubnik is the highest priced player? I agree, but I also see the vision, if that makes sense. Like I could see a scenario where Cade Klubnik is this slate's highest scoring quarterback. Like I'm not going to rule that out as a possibility. And I do think that if we're being totally honest, the salary at the quarterback position this week is largely a non-factor because of what they did at wide receiver. So while he is highest priced, while he has done nothing to deserve that, and I don't think he should be the highest priced player, I'm going to be getting to him a little bit. All right, but anyway, also, Darren saying the final iron skillet. I did not know that was the final rivalry game. The final rivalry games are a sad thing in college football. Like Texas and Texas A&M didn't play for a decade. They got to get that worked out. That's the battle of DFW. Like, get that worked out. All right. And then we got Brandon in the chat saying, you playing Underdog CFF Battle Royale. I haven't done any drafts yet this week. I'll probably get a few of them in tomorrow. But I will say this week on Underdog, my strategy is going to be to try to get a top-tier quarterback because I think that the quarterback position is what is going to end up driving this week. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So there is a plethora of options this week here. So we're going to do something a little bit different this week. We're going to have ourselves a little draft. So here are the rules. It'll be snake draft style. So if you get the first pick in the one round, you'll get, the second pick the next round. So we'll kind of end up going back to back almost. But both of us are going to end up taking 4 quarterbacks. So we're going to take 8 total quarterbacks from this slate. I don't know if we want to track the performance or not, but we're just going to kind of talk about 8 quarterbacks and kind of do it in a way where we're going to get to rank them. So Zach, would you like the first pick or would you like the second pick?
Doesn't matter to me, really. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. I will take the first pick then because I know who I want. I'm like the GM in you ever seen the movie Draft Day where he writes Vontae Mack no matter what?
Yeah.
I'm that GM right now, and I've got a guy that I want. So my first pick of the week 4 quarterback draft, I'm going to take Taylor Green from Arkansas. So in doing a little bit of research on Taylor Green, because I write the weekly article for drroto.com for their top DFS plays every week. And so I was doing some research for what I was going to write about Taylor Green. Spoiler alert, he's in that article. And did you know that Taylor Green, in his time at Arkansas, has played 7 group of 5 opponents or FCS opponents, and he has hit 36 DraftKings points in 6 of those 7 games?
Yeah, it's not surprising.
That's a very high hit rate for a guy that's only $8,400. And last time I checked, Memphis still in the American. So that's if that stat continues, pencil in Taylor Green for 36 DraftKings points, which is well over 4x value, and carry about your day. So that is why Taylor Green is my number 1 pick here in the quarterback draft.
Yeah, if I had number 1 pick, he would have been mine too. In my opinion,
so we're aligned on that.
Yeah, in my opinion, he should have been 10,000. Like he's scored 40 points every single week, and I mean, he should be higher than Klubnik. But anyways,
yes.
So for number 2 and number 3, probably right below there with Josh Hoover and Kevin Jones.
I was hoping he was going to fall to me at 4, but make the case for Hoover.
So TCU, they're still kind of struggling with the running back. Barnes looked good against North Carolina, but it's North Carolina. We know that they're not good right now. And so Hoover's just one of those guys that he's going to get a lot of points. They're going to be throwing a lot. I mean, he has 6 touchdowns on the year in the 2 games that they've played. And so also SMU, they're, giving up like, what is it? Let me see.
Over 300 passing yards a game. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I like him. And then, of course, Jennings just running that back on the other side with the rushing threat. And TCU hasn't played anybody, so I don't think that they're that great on defense.
So you're going with like a double game stack TCU SMU. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, I do wish we had like a soundboard where I could do like the ESPN, like the draft sound effect, the dun 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 dun. Get creative with it here. So with the 5th overall pick now, we've got, 4th overall pick. I don't want to get ahead of myself. With the 5th overall pick, I'm going to go ahead and take John Mateer from Oklahoma. So this is not a slight on Auburn. I think Auburn's defense is actually quite good, especially in their ability to rush the passer. But I'm just looking at what I've seen from Oklahoma this year, and they can't run the ball. Their receivers are okay at best, and I'm just seeing a scenario where he's going to have to carry this offense. We're just going to give him a ton of touchdown equity with his legs and with his arm, and I think that we really have a chance for a big-time Mateer hero ball game here in this one. So John Mateer with that upside is going to be my 2nd quarterback off the board. And then I'm going to do it with the 5th overall pick. I'm going to take Cade Klubnik. I just think that this is a dream matchup against Syracuse. We saw Syracuse get torched by Joey Aguilar in week 1, giving up about 30 DraftKings points to him. Last week, they were letting Colgate, the Fighting Toothpaste, score passing touchdowns against them. So I think that this is just a really bad pass defense, and I'm willing to play the matchup in an environment where we're not really considering cost a whole lot. I'm willing to play the matchup and the upside that we know Klubnik has from last season. So that's why Klubnik's going to be my 3rd quarterback.
Yeah, and I think, and I hope, anyways, with the price and everything, that people are kind of off Klubnik, because this is one of those matchups. People forget the first 2 games were a lot tougher than this one's going to be. And so this is one of those get right situations. But of course, people could also be turned off because also Arch Manning had a get right game and didn't do anything. So
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that, Zach.
So my next one is going to be CJ Bailey. I still think they just keep mispricing him. And Duke hasn't, Jake Retzlaff just destroyed them. And I like him, but not enough to pick him, Retzlaff, just because of the matchup. But I do think he puts up some points. And so then the last one is either – who did you pick? I forgot already.
So I took Mateer and Klubnik, and I already had Taylor Green.
Okay. Yeah, so then my last one, it's close between Mensah and Lewis, but I think I'm going to go with Lewis just because I think Arkansas is going to give up some points.
That was who I was going to take, and I thought it was going to be a sleeper. So maybe it's not as much of a sleeper as I thought. But yeah, you got the dual threat going up against Arkansas. It's not a great defense. Yeah, I love the call with Lewis. So I'm going to go slightly in a different direction. I love me a dual threat quarterback. I'm going to go Devin Dampier for my last quarterback here. I don't really like the price tag on DraftKings, but like I said, we were looking at a slate where there's so much value at the wide receiver position that getting that quarterback position right is going to be worth more than the salary, right? So Dampier, dual threat, going up against Texas Tech. We talked about this game. I think it's going to be a sleepy start, but what if it takes off in the second half and we get a few big long runs for Dampier, some touchdowns through the air, some touchdowns on the ground? He can rack up fantasy points in a hurry.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention on quarterbacks. This is the first slate, I believe anyways, that we don't have somebody that's just egregiously mispriced.
Agree.
They finally priced the quarterbacks where you kind of have to think about it. And like you mentioned, it's going to be more about the raw points with quarterback than necessarily the prices because the value is just immense.
And another thing, too, I feel like on most slates, we got Myron in the chat saying it's the slate of the year. I agree, because especially at the quarterback position, because on most slates, we could not do an 8-man draft and feel good about the 8th guy that we're pulling off the board, right? Whereas I just took Devin Dampier, and there was 2 other guys that I was considering for that spot. So that's another one that, the quarterback slate is just really, really good, bottom line. All right, so, we got Darren in the chat says, just got here. What did I miss? Well, we just concluded a quarterback draft. My team of 4 quarterbacks is Taylor Green, Cade Klubnik, John Mateer, and Devin Dampier. Zach's was Josh Hoover and Kevin Jennings, and then CJ Bailey and Brendan Lewis. So we'll see how those go, in terms of success rate, but I don't have a problem with playing any 8 of those quarterbacks here on this slate, and it's going to be a tough process for me to rule out those quarterbacks, if I'm being honest. Now, one thing I will say also, I was burned by this a little bit last week. Austin Simmons and Ole Miss. I don't trust Lane Kiffin. I don't trust Lane Kiffin at all. And even though it appears that Simmons is in line to start, even though it appears that he's good to go, I don't really trust that. And, last week they did an injury report and he wasn't even on it and he didn't play. Or he threw a touchdown randomly. He played one play. So I don't trust it. I'm going to be staying away from that, especially considering, Chambliss did some really good things in the run game. What if they just have a package for Chambliss and he vultures a few touchdowns? I just think that that's a situation I'm going to stay away from.
Yeah, I mean, we gave 8 good options there. And then also there's other ones like Morton and Retzlaff. Even I think Arnold and Underwood could be good too.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just no reason to like you said, to risk that. They could just come out, use them both.
Yeah. And got Darren in the chat says Mateer, Arnold, Nussmeier, Green, and Sorsby, all within 20-mile radius of high school in Denton County. Yeah, Texas high school football, insanely loaded, right? Like that's quite the list right there of all guys that are now starters for Power 5 or Power 4 programs. That, that's pretty darn impressive. All right, so let's go ahead and switch on over to the running back position. Like I said, wide receivers stealing all the headlines, so we're going to save them for last. Let's go ahead and talk about some running backs. So just let me think the best way to phrase this. Let's think about this from a points per dollar perspective, who our top backs on the slate are. And so I'll start us off here for this one. I'm making sure that, you got check back Saturday for the running back. I like that. I'm going to start off. There's a guy that I really like, and he's really cheap. It's Damon June at North Carolina. So, North Carolina, not exactly a put together program through 3 weeks. Shocker, right? But what they did appear to find in their last game against Richmond was a workhorse running back with Damon June. Caleb Hood did not play. I cannot find any info on an injury. It appears Damon June is just the guy there now. And we saw UCF got run all over by Jacksonville State in the opener. I think this is a great matchup with a guy who is ascending, and that salary of $4,600 allows you to do a lot. You going to be in on June, or are you going to be opting for somebody like May or July?
Yeah, so June, I definitely am going to have him in my cash lineup for sure. And really, he would have been in the core. And if we'll go over it later when you show that part. But the only reason he's not in the core is because it's Belichick, and we don't, he could just blow his nose and decide to use somebody else.
Or his girlfriend could tell him to use somebody else for that matter.
But with the price, I think it's worth it, especially with what he's done the last couple of games. I don't see any reason for them to get away from that.
All right, so you have your eyes on anybody specifically at running back?
So that's another reason why I put the whole Chet back Saturday, because a guy that's going to be in 100% of my lineups, depending on the news, is.
Oh, I know where this is going. Yeah.
Because if Des Roziers, or however you say his name, isn't playing, he's getting 20 carries, he's getting some catches, and we know that Arkansas, they gave it up to Kewan Lacey last week, and so that price is just too cheap. We just need, and he's still going to be a good play even if Des Roziers plays, but if he's out, he's gonna be a top back on the slate
for sure. And that's going to be one where you wake up Saturday morning, or even tomorrow, maybe we get news, and if the Roziers is out, that's a really appealing play to me. I really think one of the ways you can beat this Arkansas defense is by running right at him. And that's probably going to be Memphis' preferred option, because Brendan Lewis, much better runner than a thrower, in my opinion. So I like that call. So we got Darren in the chat, and Zach, we'll see if you agree with me on this. He says, why isn't Montgomery more of a factor in that UCF offense? It's a great offense for fantasy running backs. It is. And especially when you have RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey was really good there last year. I think with Montgomery, I need to see more of a sample size. Like, we've really only seen them play one game against real competition. It was against Jacksonville State, and their quarterback got hurt. And then they played, I believe, an FCS opponent. If it wasn't an FCS opponent, it was somebody really bad after that.
North Carolina A&T, and it was 68-7. It was 28-0 after the first quarter. So, I mean,
Aggie pride. Yeah. So I need to see more of a sample size before I'm willing to go Montgomery. I think he's one that the DraftKings algorithm messed up in a bad way in terms of pricing. If he were 7,000 even, I would be considering him strongly.
Yeah, I mean, I could see using him, and he's probably not going to be owned just because of the price of some of the other guys, because he did have 21 carries in that first game. So I don't think they're not using him. It's just last week, whenever you're beating somebody 40-0 at halftime, you don't need to waste your guys and risk them getting hurt. So,
right. And I know a lot of guys that actually play for that NCAA team when I used to coach high school football in the Greensboro area. Those guys are not built to defend a UCF. They're not. It's just a different level. All right, so now let's see if there's anybody else we can talk about here. So there's one guy that I'm going to go back to. He was a big part of my play last week, and he was okay. He really hit at the end thanks to his 100-yard bonus. I'm going to go back to Justice Haynes. So this is more of just like a feel thing for me. I really felt like watching Cincinnati and Nebraska opening weekend. I really felt like you could run on Nebraska. That was just kind of my takeaway from that game, was Cincinnati kept trying to throw, and it felt like Nebraska's secondary was holding up quite well, and Cincinnati didn't really have great receiver play, and it felt like you could really run on Nebraska. And granted, since then, they've played nobody, so we don't really have more of a sample size against it, but I really think that Michigan is going to come out with Justice Haynes, look to run the football. We know he has home run ability. He's hit a long run in every single game, so I really do think that this is a good spot for Haynes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he had what, like a 70-yarder that was called back.
Mm-hmm.
that would have been a difference. And I'm looking at last week, they played Houston Christian. Nebraska won 59-7, but their running back for Houston Christian averaged 6.3 yards a carry. So, uh,
Might
and
have
I
been onto
think,
something here.
yeah, Haynes, he was chalk last week, and the price literally didn't move. So I don't see any reason why he's not chalk again. So those three right there, Haynes, Smith, and June, if it was starting tonight, would be my cash game running backs.
I agree. You got anybody else you want to hit on before we move on? Because I think there might be one, but I want to see if you bring them up.
Well, actually, I have a couple more
Okay.
that I like. So another cheap guy for some people is TJ Harden.
Yes. Yes.
So it looks like he's finally taken the reins of the SMU uh, running back one, and he's a good pass catcher too. And so that's a nice one, especially if we need if we need to get off Smith because of the news, we can drop down 1,100 there. And then Kawan Lacey, I think he does good again. He's been solid every week, scored a TD in every single game. He already has 61 carries on the season. And so
workhorse.
Yeah, if they're using two quarterbacks, especially, they're going to lean on him. And then, of course, I always like Smothers. His price has finally got to where it's supposed to be.
I agree.
But he's getting a ton of volume, and Duke doesn't look like they're going to stop anybody on the ground.
Yeah, I feel like a broken record coming on here every week and just saying, hey, play the workhorse running backs, right? Well, you've got four right here near the top, as long as DeRozers is out. Between Smothers, Lacey, Haynes, and Smith, and even TJ Harden, those guys are going to see the lion's share of their carries, as far as we know. So pay for workhorse running backs in college football DFS. It's a much easier bet that way than trying to get a guy who's going to get 9 carries and hope he busts a long one. Yeah, I'd just rather have the guy that's going to get the volume. So we do have a question in the chat. Darren says, do we know anything about Kavorian Barnes? That dude is a thumper. So with Barnes, I think the jury's still out on what TCU's carry shares are going to look like. And the other issue is SMU, fairly stout run defense, pretty awful pass defense. So I think that the way you generally would want to attack this game is with the TCU passing attack. But I will say, Darren, you're playing GPPs. If you're looking to win the big bucks and you need some guys that are lowly owned, if everybody's playing the TCU passing attack, nobody's going to be playing Barnes. So I could see the merit for playing him in a GPP setting where you're just looking to be super contrarian.
Yeah. So I got a couple things to add to that. If you look at the Baylor game, so Bryson Washington had 115 yards and 2 touchdowns. So you're like, oh, great. SMU gives it up. But it was on 31 carries. So when you break it down, it was 3.7. And he's literally the only guy that was running the ball. TCU had 6 guys run the ball in game 1, and they had 5 guys carry the ball in game 2. So I think they're TCU just kind of how they have been the last several years, even whenever they went to the national title. They just prefer to have their passing attack, and then they just like to mix up the running backs. I don't think they're going to do a workhorse type thing here. And one of the guys getting the carry is Nate Palmer, who my high school actually played against him a couple of years ago.
Oh.
And he had like 4 touchdowns on us, a 4-star recruit from Decatur. They just have too many mouths to feed, in my opinion, especially with Harden only $100 less.
Yeah. And, I'm not disagreeing with Darren there. Vulture's red zone touchdowns. Like I said, if you're looking to get contrarian, that's a way you can do it. I don't think he's an optimal play, but he's a way that in a great game environment where nobody's playing him, you could definitely get some upside. And if he scores multiple touchdowns, that's a path to upside. So I'm not going to argue against that.
Yeah, I'm going to look up something real quick because I think I'm going to look up the red zone snaps so you can keep going. Because I think Battle's actually the guy that they're going to in the red zone.
So the only other thing I wanted to mention at running back is I do think we want to keep an eye on Adam Randall for Clemson, just because he's trending more and more towards that workhorse usage. He's a good pass catcher, used to play wide receiver, and Clemson's going to score 30-plus points in this game. There's definitely multiple touchdown upside there. So that's the last guy that I'm going to bring up at running back.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, Jeremiah Love, but I don't really see the need to pay up for him. There's just, again, too many mouths to feed there.
I would rather pay up for my quarterbacks than pay up for Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
Just how I view it. I'm not going to rule him out of making my player pool. I'm going to see what the optimizer comes back when I hand build. I'm going to see where I land. So I'm not going to rule him out because he is the best running back in college football, in my opinion. But I would rather make sure I'm getting my guys at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to figure out where I know I can look up red zone snaps. I just got to figure out where it is on here.
Okay. So while you're doing that, you want me to filibuster talking about wide receiver?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
We can talk about receiver.
So this is what's drawing all the headlines this week is the wide receiver position, right? And DraftKings has, like some of the wide receivers on this slate, they've dropped the ball, point blank, just because of the way that they've done some of this pricing. What you're going to see this week is you are going to see, I think, 4 receivers. Obviously, you can't really play them all 4 in the same. Well, I mean, I guess you could play them all 4 in the same lineup, but I think you're going to see 4 receivers all be incredibly chalky, and that is Manjack from TCU at a min price, Jordan Dwyer from TCU at 5,600, Harrison Wallace from Ole Miss at 4,100, and then Romello Brinson from SMU at 4,100. I think those guys are going to be chalk city this week. Do you agree with that? Disagree with that? Is there anybody else you'd throw in there, or what you think when it comes to ownership at wide receiver?
Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous how they have this. I mean, if you go to the targets, Wallace has 26 targets on the year.
Literally,
and the other guys, yeah. You got Burks, who's up there at 24. He's 7,000. Omega Blake is like 6,200, and he's up there. And when you have something like that, and it's not priced anywhere near the other guys that are up there, it's just a clear standout to see. That's the guy you just lock in. So I believe Wallace, Brinson, and then one of the TCU guys is going to be everybody's cash game wide receivers. And they're all going to be 70, 80% owned.
For sure. And I even think if you view it through the prism of, hey, I'm going to play Manjack and Dwyer together, treat them like they're one $8,600 player and expect 27, 28 DraftKings points at them, I think that's a pretty safe bet too. Like, I don't even think you need to stack them with the quarterback. I think obviously if you would want to take full advantage of the upside of playing 2 receivers from a team, you would want to play Jake Hoover. But yeah, I think both of them are going to be popular. Maybe not together, but definitely popular individually. Now, Darren in the chat, I agree with this. So would love to see Hoover's goal line fumble stats. That dude fumbles a snap inside the 5 every game. Yeah, it does feel like that. And for whatever reason, when they get to the 1 yard line, they use him like he's Tim Tebow. Like, I don't know where they got the idea that he is mobile or that he's some kind of power goal line runner, but they do it, which also adds to his fantasy production if he does do it once or twice. So not complaining about it, but it's just weird how a guy who's a non-runner just gets bashed into the line of scrimmage when they get to the 1 yard line. So now let's switch it up a little bit here. So aside from those chalky guys, right, is there anybody who really catches your eye as a great player or a great play at wide receiver on this slate? Because I would like to nominate one, but I think it might be the same guy you're going to say.
Let me think I got a couple guys in mind. Jordan Shipp, I think, is another guy that's too cheap. Especially if you're not using June. With the lower total, I don't know if I want to use both in a lineup together, especially with June being chalky. And then the other guy is Jaleel Farouk. I still think he's a little too cheap. He's right up there at 20 targets. He just hasn't found the end zone. It's going to come.
Yeah, so it happens in every DFS sport, right? Like the guy that burns you, people are so just unattached to the next week. And Farouk is still seeing a ton of targets, is still getting a lot of catches. The offense throws the ball at one of the highest rates in the nation. Just hasn't really ripped off a big play, hasn't really scored. Like the regression is coming on Farouk. And if you stick with him, you're going to get paid off eventually.
Yeah. And especially when you have these guys like Brinson and Wallace gathering so much of the ownership, they're just easy pivots in GPP. Obviously,
Yes.
in cash, you don't want to get off those guys we talked about, but in GPPs, they're still going to be 50 or 60% owned. So just play somebody else and hope that that Ole Miss finally stops throwing to Wallace and throws to some of those other guys or something. And so they're worth a look. And you can also look at Jalen Cooper on the same team as Brinson, just a little bit cheaper. He's still going to get looks too.
I would like news on Jordan Hudson before I make that one, though. I love Cooper if Hudson is out again, but if Hudson is back, that one gets a little more dicey.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, with the way that these receivers are shaping up with chalk, like there's such this dichotomy of one of the quickest ways to the top of the leaderboard is going to be fading these guys and they bust. And you have the guy that scores more than them. But also at the same time, because they're such good plays, they just have a chance that you have to have them, right? And so it's this really weird dichotomy of, do you play them? Do you not play them? How do you balance that? And so when you're building your lineup, Zach, are you going to have a rule where you say like, hey, like I'm not going to play all of them in the same lineup, or I'm going to be looking to play them at X% number? How are you kind of building for that?
So it kind of probably depends on my lineup. Obviously, if I'm stacking TCU, SMU, I'm going to throw those guys in there
for sure.
But if I'm going chalky with like Green and Hoover at quarterback or Mateer or somebody like, then I'm going to try to maybe get a little different and go to like Ship or Farouk or somebody over Wallace or Brinson because they could see just as much scoring right there for a little bit cheaper. And I also want to throw out another guy because I still don't think OU's offense is defense is great. Yeah, they beat Michigan, but Michigan was on the road. Cam Coleman is a guy that we know he's extremely talented. And so it's just a matter of time until he's going to break out. Texas Tech receivers, they're cheap. And like you said, could be sleepy first half, but could blow up in the second half, and they're all under 6,000. And so just basically literally use anybody other than TCU guys, Wallace and Brinson, and you're already different at wide receiver.
Right. I really like your call on Coleman. To me, he's the guy that could win you all the money this week. Is what if Cam Coleman goes out and just has the I'm him alpha wide receiver game where he gets 10 catches over 100 yards, scores a touchdown. Like he has that in him because we've seen him do it. At the end of last season, he was spectacular. And that was against SEC defenses. So I really do think he's a guy that has a ton of upside. Now, granted, don't come with your pitchforks in an angry mob, angry at me when he scores 8 DraftKings points, but I think he does have a ton of upside considering that nobody's going to be looking at him. He's more expensive than the guys that everything are looking at. And I just think he's that guy that could really break a slate.
Yeah, I mean, Ball State game, he had 7 catches for 77 yards. The last 2 games, he scored over 12 DraftKings points, and one of them, he only had 2 catches too.
Right.
So,
I will say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we've seen it every week. One of these guys, other than the Michael Jackson at the beginning of the week, beginning of the year, these cheap guys like Riley last week bust, and some other guys that have been cheap that seem like obvious chalk. So it's Ole Miss has a ton of other guys like Stribling, Lee, even the tight end. Right. I mean, there's at least with SMU, they don't really have a bunch of other guys. And with TCU, but even TCU, they have McAllister too. I can't forget about him.
So while you were talking there, I kind of wanted to go back and look at like cheap chalk all year. How is it done? Right. So last week, the cheap chalk pretty much all busted. Livingstone, Riley. I'm sure there's another one that is not coming to me right now. In week 2, the cheap chalk was Cam Ross at Virginia, right? He didn't kill you but he didn't win you any of the money. He got like 9 DraftKings points on a $3,500 salary, so that wasn't a bust, but it certainly didn't like boost you if you played him. Romello Brinson was cheap chalk that week in week 2, and he did hit. He had the deep touchdown against Baylor. At the running back position in week 2, let me see if there was anybody who was cheap chalk. I don't think there was. Maybe the Iowa guys, maybe, but
no, I don't think anybody actually ended up playing them just because nobody trusted it.
Right. So cheap chalk in terms of like the season long average, like Michael Jackson from Purdue in week 1 was the guy you had to have. Last week, all of it busted. In week 2, it was somewhere in the middle. So more likely than not, what you're probably going to see this week is between those 4 guys that we've been talking about, Manjack, Dwyer, Wallace, and Brinson, you're probably going to see one of them hit. You're probably going to see one of them be just okay, and you're probably going to see one of them bust. And then the fourth one is a combination of the 3. So what I'm probably going to do this week when I'm building out through an optimizer is I'm probably going to set it so that way I'm stacking my quarterbacks. And so what I mean by that is if I'm playing Mateer, I'm going to want to get to Burks or Kenneck or another one of the receivers. And what that does is that's going to take up one of those receiver spots. So that way I can't play all the chalky receivers in the same lineup. That's going to be my plan is I want to play them and I want to get to them a lot, but I don't want to play them all in the same lineup because there's just not a very high likelihood that all of them are going to hit. And one guy I will shout out is like the super cheap nuki play that I think you could get to. If you're looking to stack up the Arkansas and no, it's not Arkansas and Tulane this week. Who plays Tulane? Ole Miss and Tulane. If you're looking to stack up the Ole Miss and Tulane game, I really do like the idea of getting to Amari Hayes at $3,200. All the other cheap guys on this slate that aren't Wallace, Brinson, and Manjack are going to be so lowly owned. So you have a guy in Hayes that's his team's wide receiver 1 in a game with a high total. No one's going to own him. You can stack him with Retzlaff if you want. You don't have to play Retzlaff. But I think that's a guy that you could go with that's in a huge leverage spot that could be better than the chalk.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then also Caden Lee, he's down there after a couple of weeks being down. And then Jaylen Brown, Arkansas, they throw to Blake mainly, but they also throw to Jaylen Brown and CJ Brown, and they're both cheap too. And then I want to go to Darren's question. Would you take over on Auburn OU? And I'm actually going to say yes, because if you guys remember, Arnold was the quarterback at OU, and he literally cited reasons of toxic comments from fans and students as part of the reason he's transferring. And then, he got benched. So I fully believe in revenge games, especially whenever a guy leaves on bad terms. And that was definitely a bad situation there. And so I think he's going to come out with something to prove. That's why I think him and Coleman could be in for a big day.
And I think, too, looking at it kind of objectively, the Auburn defense didn't look spectacular against Baylor. And Oklahoma, everybody's propping their defense up because of how they looked against Michigan. That was a true freshman quarterback on the road in his second start. And so I think there's a chance that these defenses aren't as good as everybody thinks they are. And I do like the idea of taking the over there. I also think that you could look at an alt total and just go all the way up or ladder it up. I don't think that's a bad move either, because I do think there's a pathway to that game just going totally bananas.
Yeah, that's probably my game, like Georgia, Tennessee last week, that people are overlooking that I think could be the one that shoots out.
And so then the last question from Darren, and then we'll talk about the core. It says, why is Duke offense not better with Mensa this year? Surely he's better than Malik Murphy. Seems like Duke had some good fantasy weeks last season. I would attribute that a little bit to opponent. Like, Tulane's a solid defense. Illinois is a solid defense. And with Mensa, they've been able to move the ball up and down the field. He's just had turnover problems. And so I think that, once they kind of get into the ACC, get some of these weaker defenses that they're going to go up against, I think that he's going to have some big games, because you can definitely see it when you watch him, that the talent is there.
Yeah, and we know that North Carolina State has not been a great defense.
Not at all.
So I think this is actually a sneaky spot for him. He threw 51 times against Tulane, and he still ended up getting there. A lot of people were angry in the first half, but he was 4,900, and he ended up scoring like 25 or 30 at the end of it because he just threw the whole game. And that's what's going to happen here against NC State.
Yeah, I remember the Fantasy Corner Discord, not big Darian Mensah fans in the first half of that game. And then as it goes into the second half, then people start turning around a little bit, right? Because, you want your guys to do good. And the first half, he wasn't doing all that good.
And then one more while we're talking on Duke, cheap guy, is that Cooper Barcate.
Like him this week.
He had 5 for 67 last week. I mean, he's just been a solid floor guy. 4 catches every week, at least 4 or 5 catches, and then at least 60 yards every week. So, and another guy that's eventually going to find the end zone, and when he does, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and I'm going to just start calling him the smartest man in college football. The guy's literally going to have a bachelor's degree from Harvard and a master's degree from Duke. Like, very well-educated man there in those 2 degrees he's getting. This is an offense that's throwing the ball a ton. And, it's kind of like the same thing we were talking about at the running back position. Like, why wouldn't I play a guy on an offense that's going to throw 50 times? Because, even if the target share is slightly less, the volume is going to be there. Just, eventually math wins in DFS. A little bit of a biased opinion there as a high school math teacher, but the math is going to math out eventually. And I do think that he's in a really good spot for some regression in that regard as well.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead now. And, we're getting close to wrapping up here. So if you guys got anybody specific you want to talk about, anybody, even if you're playing like the different kinds of games, player props, bets, underdog drafts, whatever, if there's anything you guys want us to hit before we leave, put it in the chat. Let us know. Because we're going to go ahead and talk about the core. So the core 4, I think I could have seen this coming, Zach, because given how we talked on this episode, I bet if we let the audience guess who the core 4 was going to be, they probably could have gotten this right. So we're starting off with Harrison Wallace at Ole Miss, the most obvious play on the slate to me, the number 1 most targeted player on the slate. He's only $4,100. He's in a game environment where his team is implied to score well north of 30 points. I can't poke any holes in the resume there. It's hard to not have him as a core play.
Yeah, and we kind of we were talking in the first couple of weeks, wait and see what's going on. They got a lot of guys, but as I wrote in the description for the core, maybe it's just the fact that he actually has a good quarterback now. Drew Aller's not a good passing quarterback, and Penn State loves to run the ball, and Ole Miss likes to chuck it around, and so. Maybe it's just the new fit for this offense is a lot better for him. And so maybe he's just become the number 1 guy there because he's beaten. I mean, it's obvious if Lee and Stribling aren't getting the targets that the quarterbacks prefer him. The only thing I will say is talking about that with the 2 quarterbacks, that could screw up the chemistry and the rhythm a little bit. But he was targeted just as much with Chambliss too. So
it kind of seems to me, the Kiffin offense, historically speaking, is really good at scheming receivers open and making reads really easy for the quarterback. It's why Trey Harris saw a ton of volume last year, because all Jackson Dart had to do was say, during this coverage, I'm going to Trey Harris. I don't even have to read it. And Dart was really good and Trey Harris was really good. And, it feels to me like Wallace is in that Trey Harris role where the quarterback's not even reading it. They're just throwing it to him. And, to kind of piggyback on what we've been talking about all episode, that leads to a lot of volume. And so and volume leads to fantasy points. So I'm with it because, side note, did you see the tweet that went viral about Drew Aller today?
No, I didn't. Yeah.
So it definitely, so you guys know I'm not the biggest Drew Aller fan. Like, do I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback? Yes. Do I think he is overrated in terms of his DraftKings price, his Heisman odds, and general perception as a college quarterback? Also, yes. So there was a tweet that it showed Drew Aller's stats, and you know how ESPN does the QBR on a scale of 0 to 100? Yeah. So his QBR was 39, right? And somebody, posted the picture and said, if you just spike the ball into the ground every play, you would have a QBR of 38.4, but that's not QBR, that's QB rating that they were talking about. So they were misplacing the two metrics, and people were like, oh, he's not better than just spiking the ball. He's awful. And it's like, no, like y'all are misplacing the stats here, guys. But so I was very tempted to, hit that retweet button, is more Drew Hour slander. And then I'm like, wait a minute, this is a non-ball knowing take. These guys don't know stats. So I very much resisted the urge because it was definitely wrong. Anyway, let's talk about another quarterback now. So you guys heard me opine about Taylor Green earlier. Zach, tell us why you like Taylor Green.
Yeah, I mean, he's got basically 40 plus every week, and you want the safety quarterback more often than not. And I don't have the breakdown to back it up, but especially for cash games, and that's what I'm a heavy cash game single entry guy. The quarterbacks is what makes or break you. You basically need combined from your two quarterbacks 40 plus to be able to be sniffing anything. And so when you can get a guy that even on a bad game is going to get you 25 plus, then you're going to take it all day long. He's just such a good runner that it's just so good of a floor. And Memphis is not going to be a defense that's going to slow him down at all. The only thing that could be is Mike Washington could vulture some or something, but
yeah. And generally speaking, I wish there was really easy ways for college football to like aggregate stats like this, but I would love to know what SEC quarterbacks average in fantasy scoring going up against G5 opponents. Because aside from DJ Lagway going up against South Florida, I feel like every scenario that we could have had to target one of those this year has been really good. And that would include Taylor Green this week going up against Memphis. The Memphis guys on the other side of the ball just are not going to be as good and as athletic as the Arkansas, and that's going to play right into Taylor Green's hands. So now let's take a look at the last core play for now. It's going to be Jordan Dwyer. We've mentioned him already. Receiver on this slate, egregiously mispriced. Dwyer has been the wide receiver one for this TCU offense. The SMU pass defense has been bad. And so going right back to targeting against the SMU passing defense, going right to getting the TCU passing offense with a really high pass rate, just makes a ton of sense to go Jordan Dwyer.
Yeah, I mean, I like going Manjack or McAllister in GPPs, but in cash, it's going to be Dwyer. He's had the most targets, the most touchdowns, everything, and we saw with Baylor, Hawkins and Cameron both went nuts. So it's not like multiple guys can't get there.
Yeah, and especially at the price tags. Like I talked about the metaphor earlier, like treating Dwyer and Manjack like they're $1,600 player, and like I'd rather have both of them than $1,600 player, if I'm being honest, when you account the production that they're accounting for. So just another guy that makes a ton of sense. And like we got written here, check back to Saturday for running back. I do believe we mentioned everybody who made the write up here, didn't we?
Yeah, the main three guys are Haynes because it's a good matchup. He's going to be chalk again. That's just an easy plug in there. Demon June, which we talked about, and then Sutton Smith. And really, I think even if Des Roziers is in, I think Smith is still going to be pretty high owned.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I like all three of those guys. I don't know which one's going to make my core yet. I don't know which one's going to make my write-ups yet. I still don't know how I'm going to handle stacking on this slate because it's very tempting to just say, you know what? If I'm playing both these TCU wide receivers, I'm just going to go ahead and play Hoover. I'm going to go ahead and play the SMU guys, and I'm just going to hope that this turns into a mid-2010s Big 12 game. So those are some decisions I've still got to make for the remainder of my core as well. So I'm not shocked to see that, you still got waiting on the running back right there. So let's get caught up in the chat, and then we're going to probably roll on out of here. So Darren says, big chance for an AAC statement week. If they get 2 wins versus SEC plus South Florida win over Florida, does that do anything come playoff time if we have an unbeaten AAC, or does it not matter? So my perception right now is when it comes to the CFP, the group of 5 that gets one bid, I would be shocked if that bid does not go to an American athletic team. I would be shocked. Like they have by far the best non-conference resume out of all those conferences. They've got teams like South Florida, Memphis, North Texas, even that have looked impressive in the non-conference. And they've also got teams like UTSA, who I still think have enough upside to win the conference once conference play gets rolling. So I just have a hard time seeing any other conference beat them out for the G5 bid. That's my perception of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, normally, Boise's always the team that could get it, but this year Boise's down. They play Notre Dame, but that's not going to matter because they already lost to South Florida.
Yeah, you can't take Boise. If South Florida wins the AAC, you literally can't take Boise over them.
Yeah.
Like you just can't.
Mm-mm. And I don't know. I'm trying to think. I can't really think unless Memphis. It's still an AAC, but unless Memphis beats Arkansas, you can't really look at Memphis either.
Yeah. Well, and the AAC is one of these chaos conferences, though, where like the top of the conference is so close together that there could be a surprise team get to that championship game and then win it. So maybe could there be a scenario where Boise gets in over like a 9-win Tulane, maybe, or 9-win UTSA or 9-win North Texas? I could see it, but like, I don't know. I really think the AAC has represented themselves well in the non-conference. Unfortunately, my Charlotte 49ers are not representing themselves well in conference play tonight, but the AAC is definitely looking like a much improved league from what I've seen so far this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're not winning this game.
What's the score now?
It's 28-17. We got a touchdown. Broke a little slant route. Broke a tackle on a safety. Yeah, this was one of the games that you had penciled as a Charlotte fan that was a winnable game, and they're not winning. So it's going to be a long remainder of the year as a Charlotte fan. Oh well. But,
yeah,
like I always tell people, Charlotte is my school because that's where my degree's from, but Texas is my team because when I grew up watching sports, that was, the team that I grew up rooting for, grew up watching. So, the good year to be a dual fan, right?
Yeah, of course, my last spot in the showdown, I looked at Alexander. I was like, no, Charlotte's going to be passing, and I did another receiver for Charlotte. And Alexander has 2 touchdowns stolen from Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson has been run really bad when it comes to touchdown luck tonight.
And everybody who faded Harrell wins the money.
Yep, because he got hurt. It just, yeah. And I had a lot of the receiver Dickman. I thought I was actually like, oh, this is a sneaky little play. And then he's like 60% owned, and it's like, well, it wasn't really that sneaky.
Yeah, everybody in my lineup, the lowest guy is Nicholas at 53%. And literally everyone else is like 70, 80, 90.
Well, let's see if I had anybody. Yeah, Harrell 93%. So the 7% out there that didn't play him, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm still cashing, but 3 snowflakes.
Yeah. Ugh. Oh well. Hey, it's at least it's only the Thursday night slate, which means we got Friday and we got Saturday, right? All right, so we're going to go ahead and close it out there, I think. So, Zach, before we go, tell the people where can they find this sheet that we've been looking at all night?
Yeah, so I posted on Twitter on the @BigCountryDFS, also in the Big Country DFS Discord, which you can find the link to on the pinned post on Twitter, and I also posted in the Fantasy Quarter Discord. And also wanted to mention, I just now remembered, I know a while back there, Darren had asked about Devin Maccabee, and he is only 5,000. And so I'll probably got to go to him some just because he burned me last week. But again, it's going to be the same thing, the negative game script that could screw him, especially if they kept bringing in another guy on pass down. So I don't know if they just don't like him anymore for pass plays or what.
I think I'm probably going to wait and see on that one because last week, if Le'Veon Moss doesn't get 3 1-yard touchdowns, it's a totally useless game on the ground for him. And so I don't have the same optimism that Maccabee's going to get the short yardage goal line touchdowns that Le'Veon Moss got. So I'm probably staying away, given that I think Notre Dame's generally a tough matchup. All right, so that about does it. Darren's saying, okay, we'll close it out with this, saying, good luck in Friday Night Lights tomorrow. Do you have a winnable game?
Yeah, well, we're actually playing our rivals. So I live in Pampa, and Borgers right down the road on the highway, 30 minutes down the road. Right, big rivalry, and we've actually won the last 10 straight in the series, going for 11 here. And so we should. Last week, our quarterback and running back both went out with concussions at halftime, and so we were ahead. We had 16 minutes time of possession and 160 yards rushing at half, and but it was so much of our offense that going down with the concussion that kind of screwed us there. But we should get the win tonight or tomorrow night. So hopefully.
Yes. So this, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but the school that I coach at is playing the number one quarterback in the nation tomorrow. He's committed to Tennessee. That's going to be a running clock game. It's it's not a fair fight. I wish them all the best of luck. I hope that they are able to stay healthy and represent themselves well, but that is not a fair fight when you got a bunch of average high school kids going up against the number one recruit in the country with an offensive line in front of them that all weigh north of 250. Now, I will add, though, because I mentioned this on the show before, that I switched from coaching high school football to girls flag football when I had my daughter and when I really wanted more time at home, right? So tomorrow starts our first official tryout for girls flag football. And we won our conference championship last year, right? It was the first year that it had ever been done. I'm a football coach out there running real football plays, so it's kind of like an advantage that we had over everybody. But I've had so many girls come up to me in the hallway and be like, hey, I want to come out for flag football. I want to come out for flag football. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have like 60 girls at this tryout and I'm going to have to cut 2/3 of them. And I've got like 18 of my 25 players from last year back. So like, I don't know, like almost feel like saying like, yeah, like come on out. But like in the same time, I'm like, oh no, that's just another girl I'm going to have to cut. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe some of them, when they get out there and realize, oh, these girls that played last year, they're good. They're better than me. They might realize like, okay, maybe this is not the sport for me. I'm going to go ahead and go play cross country or something. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that'll be the story time next week is how the girls flag football tryouts are going. Because let me tell you, if you've never done it before, coaching girls is actually really fun. So like the first practice I had, I was telling them, I'm like, we're going to throw and catch routes, right? So I'm like, all right, y'all go over there, y'all go run a slant route. And they looked at me like, well, what's a slant route? And I'm like, well, okay, so a slant route, you line up here, you take 3 steps, boom, you cut in at an angle, and I demonstrated it for them. And every single one of those girls did their best to recreate that route. Even though they had never heard of it 10 seconds before, they knew that was what I wanted and they were going to run it. Like, boys don't generally do that. Boys are going to try to do what they see on Madden or what they hear about on TV or what their trainer tells them. Like there's a lot of voices in the head of boys. Girls was not that way. They did exactly what they were coached. Yeah, Darren, it sounds like you need a JV squad. I do, but the problem is I don't want to coach a JV squad. I don't have time to coach 2 teams. Then I'll be right back in the same boat I was in. I like having just one team where I can end practice at 6:00 instead of being out there till 8:00 every night like I was for tackle. So, yeah. All right. So, Zach, you got any closing thoughts for us before we go?
No, I mean, just like as always, since we're doing on Thursday, you always got to get in the Discord, one of them somewhere, get some news. And, we never know. Somebody could eat a bowl of chili on Friday night that didn't sit well. And so they're going to be sitting or they're puking on the sideline in warm-ups or, there's always something crazy happening.
My prediction for Saturday is all these chalk receivers, one of them's going to nuke and one of them's going to bust. And having the right combination of playing the one that nukes and fading the one that busts, that's going to be where all the money's won. And if you can set up your portfolio to correctly predict that, that's going to be what you need to do. That's my prediction here before the slate starts. But all right, I think that's going to do it for tonight, Zach. Zach, this is the 5th time I guess you've done it for 5th time. This is my 4th time because I had was out last week. So thank you for covering. Thank you for doing the solo show. I went back and watched it on Friday. It was, pretty much the same product as if we'd done it together. So you did a good job with your first solo experience on the stream. But anyway, for those of you that are still watching, we're going to hope to be back here next Thursday night again. Set your timers, like a Thursday night CBS show. Will be the same time every week. And thank you guys for tuning in live. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope we gave you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning DFS lineups here on the Week 4 slate. Best of luck to you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.